All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you once again for coming to our organizational meeting presentation. This particular session is, we're circling back on this one because we recognize based on feedback that there were some areas that you all had, some questions you had in the areas of administrative operations and instruction. And so Terence and Pete thought it'd be great to circle back and try to address some of the concerns or questions that you expressed via the feedback form. And so this is our circle back. And also there was a lot that we didn't know, if you recall, at the time these presentations were made. And so we know a little bit more, and we want to play catch up with you and share what we know. And again, there will not be a Q&A as part of this presentation. Even the feedback forms have been modified to better collect your thoughts and ideas. So Pete and Terence have agreed to tag team on this one. And so I am going to stop talking and go ahead and let them do their presentation. And again, please, please, please provide us with feedback on your forms, on the form, so that we can be responsive. And again, thank you for coming. And Pete and Terence, you have the Zoom meeting.
Okay, well, let me get started here. So I'm just going to review administrative services and give you not so much the organizational changes, but sort of directional changes and some considerations that we're, well, considering, both in the light of your feedback and in light of changing circumstances. So let me start with the land acknowledgement. On behalf of North Seattle College, we acknowledge that we occupy the traditional ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Duwamish tribe, a people that are still here, continuing to honor and bring to light their ancient heritage. Without them, we would not have access to this gathering, dialogue, and learning space. We ask that we take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers of this land who are still here. And later on, you'll see I have something to share that relates directly to this. So the budget. Let's start by talking about finances in the budget. This was the budget schedule, which I shared with the extended executive team about a month and a half ago. And as you can see, we had two phases of the budget. One was a preliminary budget, which was due to the board in June. And then the final budget, which would involve more changes, which would be due to the board in August to be adopted in September. Then something happened, something called CTC Link. Not only has that overwhelmed our staff, but it has also caused a lot of problems, system problems, which make it really not feasible to develop a preliminary budget within the system. So the final budget, we're really not going to start with that process until May because things are just too much of a mess, frankly. So what's going on? Well, these are the people who are in the know, right? I mean, these four August personalities, knowledgeable, experienced professionals, they know what's in the future financially, don't they? Well, they actually don't because they're blinded by CTC Link. And when I say that, they're blinded because CTC Link is not working as it's supposed to from a reporting perspective. It's really not possible for us to understand exactly where our finances are. There are just too many adjustments and so on that are being made. That said, I think I can still give you a decent overall picture because while a lot of details, you know, a million here, a million there off, the big picture is pretty clear. You may recall last summer and fall, I had this slide about our financial future. And it was basically saying, we are running a huge deficit. COVID is disrupting everything financially, but this is the wild card. The wild card are the bills in Congress. And let's wait and see what happens because that'll be a big deal. So here's what's happened. We budgeted a $5.1 million deficit this year. That's what we anticipated. We anticipated losing $5.1 million at North. In addition to the financial aid funding that came to the students through the CARES Act, we received $1.7 million as an institution. We also received $3.2 million from the next act, which is in December, which was CRISA. We received $3.2 million for that. And the most recent one, which was passed just a month ago, the ARPA Act, we received $3.6 million. When I say we received, we have the authority to draw down that much money from the federal government bank account, providing we can find qualified expenses. So we may not be able to capture or realize all that money, but we can certainly do pretty darn well from what we can tell. So if you add all that up, you start with a $5.1 million deficit, you end up with a $3.4 million surplus, which is pretty amazing. Now, this problem solved, right? Well, not exactly, because this is all one time, right? We get the checks and no more are coming. And when I say no more are coming, I think we can be pretty assured that no more are coming in this form. It's just extremely unlikely politically. And we still have this structural deficit. And I'm going to pull back and look at this from a district perspective. So what you see here is on the vertical axis is, you can think of it as how much money the district as a whole, all three campuses plus the district, have in the bank, which isn't restricted. Restrictions are things like it can be only be used for student financial aid, that kind of thing. So unrestricted funds, you can think of it as cash. It's not quite cash, but it's pretty close. The gray line shows you what the budgeted amount of cash was for July 2021 at the district level, which is basically $25 million in unrestricted cash. The orange line is the monthly, what they call cash burn. It's how much money is going out the door in excess of what we're bringing in. So that's, million, I forgot the exact number, 1.7 million or something like that. And so what this shows you, the gray line shows you, that we would have started with $21 million, and without any supplementary funding from the state or anything like that, or from the federal government, at that rate of expenditure, by May 2023, we would be bankrupt as a district. Now, the good news is that the federal government stepped in with CRISA. And so that 25 million turned into approximately $35 million as a starting point, which extended the life of our bank account to February 2024. Even better, and this is the blue line, the state, which had told us they were cutting back, said, oh, we're bringing in more revenue than we expected. We're not going to cut back so much. That brought the starting point up to 42 million. Okay, now September 2024 is when we run out of cash. And finally, this most recent act, the green line, ARPA, brought us up essentially to a $55 million starting point. And that has us not going bankrupt until July 2025, right? So the point here is twofold. One is, I am not as stressed as I was when I first arrived here, because I think we have more time than at that point. At the same time, we still have the same fundamental underlying problem. We built a cost structure based on a very robust international program, and that program is essentially, it's just dwindled to something insignificant, and we haven't adjusted our cost structure to match that reality yet, and we will run out of money. So the board has been taking this into consideration and saying, when do we balance? And the mandate is we have time, but by 23, 24, we need to have balanced budgets. So that's a big picture of where we are. all I can tell you in terms of how we're going to get to a balanced budget is we are going to need to reduce costs. There's been a discussion at the philosophical level among the presidents and the chancellor, and their thinking right now is essentially that this coming year will make relatively modest cuts. Next year, when I say next year, I mean 22, 23, will make more significant cuts. And then the following year, 23, 24, sort of less significant cuts again. So a bell curve. Now, when I say the word less significant, that doesn't mean it's without impact. Quite the contrary, we're talking millions of dollars, but still that's sort of the general shape of the curve. Now, everything I've been talking about up to now is about the operating budget. There's also a capital budget, and the capital budget pays for the library, the remodel of the library. And the story there is that the Senate and the governor proposed budgets where the library remodel would be funded, and everything looked great. And then the House capital budget came out, and the library wasn't in there, not even close. A lot of things weren't in there. So there's a possibility that the library will be just as it is for the next 2 years. That said, we also know through the work of some people at the district that the House Capital Chair is open to providing funding up to the level which would fund the library, but it's not committing to it up front. The Senate and the House are in conference, and we'll know 3 weeks to a month from now what happened. Right now, everything's taking place in the smoke-filled room, but we are still hopeful that the library remodel will be funded and that we will see construction start in September. So moving on to our facility staffing. One of the things that feedback we got last time was we had cut back on facilities staffing, and many of your comments expressed concern about how that would affect facilities. We'd said that we were going to focus on the classrooms, do less upkeep and custodial work in offices and that type of thing, and that people would need to be a little more self-sufficient, for want of a better word phrase. We'd also said we were cutting back somewhat on maintenance staffing, and there was concerns expressed about that. So let me just say, share your concerns. And there are specific reasons we share your concerns. The first is that we have been in a shutdown mode, which has enabled us to do a lot of great things. So you'll come back, there'll be a lot of classrooms which are dingy, which are now painted. Power washing is going on. I think by the time we reopen, whenever that is, the campus will look much fresher than it has looked. But when we come back, things will be different because the cleaning standards, the disinfection standards and that type of thing will not be the same. They'll be more rigorous and more stringent. There's still a lot of changing guidance, but the one thing I can tell you is we cannot support the full reopening with the protocols that are currently in place with the current staff. Not possible. So we are just analyzing and evaluating and trying to understand how to staff to meet the need and how to structure that so that if or when, depending on your point of view, things return to somewhat normal and the standards of disinfection cleanliness can revert, how we structure everything so that is not overly disruptive or perceived as unfair. So that's one thing. Then the other thing about business as normal, one of the nice things about things being shut down is that there's a lot more flexibility to just get work done for the maintenance team because they don't have to work around people as much and that type of thing. And there aren't as many work orders coming in that are I was going to say distracting, but taking them off track of just finishing one job. So that's a good thing. But when we reopen, there'll be a lot more disruption. It'll be much harder to keep up. And just as importantly, we've been doing surveys looking more closely at the state of our facilities, and what we're finding is super disturbing. So I'm going to switch gears for a moment here and just point something out here. This here is your Friendly Skies Southwest airline plane with a nice big engine. What's inside that engine? Well, what's inside that engine is, turns out it's this, because there's a fan inside that engine, and a blade from that fan came off, and it went from this to that in an instant. You've probably heard the story, right? Now, that happened to be a fan blade that broke because of a quality assurance design flaw. But what's much more common when things break is they haven't been maintained. So we have our own fans, and we have a lot of equipment in the HVAC systems and that type of thing that we have not been maintaining in a consistent way. There's something called preventative maintenance, which is to say, you know that on a certain cycle, things should be reviewed, maintained, refreshed, replaced, et cetera. And you do that proactively. You don't wait until things break. The maintenance philosophy, culture, whatever you want to call it, at North Seattle and the Seattle colleges in general has been what I'll call a reactive maintenance approach, which is to say that when things go wrong, you fix them, right? So we're trying to shift the culture to a preventative maintenance culture, which means that on a scheduled basis, you go and you replace a bearing, you grease something, you do whatever needs to be done on a scheduled basis. This is a major multi-year project because it means you need to identify every single thing you've got and understand what you need to do. This approach here is going to take us more time in the short term. It's going to take less time in the long term, but in the near term, we've both got to keep fixing the things that keep breaking because they weren't maintained, as well as get on top of the maintenance backlog. And this is where our fan story comes in. And I'll give you a big picture here. We have 16 fans serving the entire campus that move air through the campus. They are supposed to be maintained, preventative maintenance, every 10 years. And it costs about $1,000 a fan to do that, labor and sort of basic parts. The last time that was done was 1997. So it's supposed to happen every 10 years, right? So it was supposed to happen in 2007, and then it was supposed to happen again 2017. Didn't happen. So if we had done that, fans would have been down one day, and it cost us $48,000 for the whole 20 years or 16 years or whatever it is. But we didn't do it. And so we recently, because of the COVID requirements and everything and certain concerns we had when we looked at and inspected the fans we have, we ended up having someone come in and say, okay, let's see what needs to be done to make sure that everything will run, at the level needed. And we found out that we had some really serious problems. And it's about $250,000, a little less than that actually, that we're going to have to spend on fixing all these fans. Now, and it's instead of the buildings being out a few days or a fan at a time being out a day, we're going to have no air movement in IB for like 2 to 3 weeks. Same the first floor of HSSR. Now, having said all that, I mean, that's a consequence of not doing preventative maintenance. Had we not done this, that airplane engine story would have probably happened for us. We would have literally had a fan fly out of an enclosure and have to be replaced entirely. And here's the deal with that. That cost would have been $560,000. And because all our equipment's over 50 years old, right at 50 years old, stuff is no longer made. All has to be custom made. We would be looking at basically $600,000. So we did preventative maintenance on the one hand, $48,000, down a day or two. If everything went to hell, $560,000, 6 to 8 months of not being able to have air moving and therefore heat, air conditioning, healthy air in the building. So that's why we're really focused on preventative maintenance. There's a bigger picture here, which is essentially that we haven't had a real facilities management plan. We've been very reactive. We don't have good policies to make sure our resources are directed properly. And for that reason, we've stood up a facilities stewardship committee. The word stewardship is advisedly stewardship, right? It's like to take care of our facilities overall. And we're looking to develop a facilities plan with the help of that committee so that we don't end up where that we can recover from where we've been, which is many decades, frankly, of neglect, and can have a great learning environment in the years to come. One of the projects we're currently engaged in is an energy savings project called an ESCO project for Energy Savings Company. And I'll just say this, one is we've applied for a $500,000 grant from the Commerce Department, State Commerce Department. We'll find out at the end of April whether we got it or not. If we've gotten it, we will be replacing, we'll be doing a lot of things. The thing you'll notice the most is we'll be replacing all the fluorescent lights with modern LED fixtures. So we'll have nice, bright, energy efficient lights. It'll be good for the environment. And after we've paid off the loan, 12 years from now, we'll be saving about $300,000 a year from that. Now, I know what you really care about, folks, is food, right? You're wondering what our food vision is. Well, this is a great vision, right? Serve yourself anything you want, changes every day. Well, this, I'm afraid, is the reality of what we're planning to do for next year. The district is looking to extend Sodexo's vending contract, so we have more vending options, but this is pretty much what it is. Now, looking forward though, this here is a picture of our kitchen. It's from our culinary program. It's a magnificent facility, and it could support some great stuff. And so what we're going to be aggressively exploring once we have some sense of when the pandemic allows us to do this in terms of actually working, is to work with, put it this way, restaurants could really use a kitchen like this for delivery service, that type of thing. So we're going to be looking at leasing out the kitchen and the equipment in the kitchen as well, because that's valuable, but also seeing if there's an opportunity to have some service off of this vendor. It wouldn't work if you just had them serving the campus. It would not work. There was not enough money on the campus to do this type of thing. But if you have this kind of thing, which is serving other restaurants as well, it can work quite well. So we're looking into that. On to more mundane matters, transportation. Right now, our parking lots are empty, but we anticipate big changes that we're going to have to cope with, which mean that we're going to be changing our permitting system. So right now, you get a plastic permit that you hang in your car. We're moving to virtual permits, and we're also going to have a new pedestrian crossing that is generated by the fact that there will be a pedestrian bridge to light rail. We're going to need to work with parking for potential commuters to light rail, and we're looking at redesigning our permit rate structure. So virtual permits, a few words on those. What's a virtual permit? Well, you're looking at it. It's your license plate. The advantage of virtual permits, where your plate is your permit, are that you can pay online. In other words, there's no having, it's just like, it's an app, right? You can just pay online or pay through your computer. So your permit becomes instantly usable. You can also pay at a kiosk just by entering your license plate, and you can pay via, a phone app. And the enforcement of all this is done via scanning of license plates. We just drive up and down the row with a camera. Other institutions have found that when this happens, the people who've always paid for permits, as they should, are good. The people who haven't start buying permits because they get ticketed, and they don't like that. So you don't have as many, what I'll call, people start playing by the rules more. So that's a big change. Now, part of this is being driven by the fact that light rail is opening in the fall of 2022. So people are going to be coming to campus and leaving campus via light rail. And through this nice little bridge, they'll just be heading straight onto campus. This is driving a lot of changes for us in administrative services. So you can see here that Interstate 5 is, at the top of the screen. That blue line is where the new pedestrian bridge comes in. And you'll see right here, this is where we currently have a path marked by a crosswalk that gets people across the, well, people aren't going to walk all that way to the bridge. They're going to cross as quickly as they can. They're going to cut across. So we're going to need to do something to create a passage here. The other thing you should know is that this area here, we are looking at potentially setting aside for park and ride, just because reality, we intend to charge a premium for that service. And finally, this passage is just going to bring a lot more people to campus that went there before. And right over here, we have this sort of play area for children. It may not be so wise to maintain that in its current location, given the security concerns that come with a different population and the visibility of that location and everything. So briefly, this is what we're looking at doing for the near term. Fifth Avenue would become the crossway to the pedestrian bridge, and we would set up some crosswalk signs, some jersey barriers, and make bike lockers available right there for people. So that's something we're working on. As I said, this will bring a new population to campus and a lot more people. So campus safety is going to need to adapt to the changes around who is on campus. We're going to have to adapt to the changes that come with that. And never mind those changes, our goal is to develop greater trust going forward with the people we serve and be more community oriented, shall we say. We're also going to need to, and are looking at increasing our awareness of what's going on campus through the use of technology, which is to say cameras. And also to improve safety through procedural clarity and training. What I mean by that, right now, there are a lot of safety practices, especially around chemicals and that type of thing, use of equipment, that we're not training people well enough to work with that and handle that. We're going to do better. And finally, we're going to work on improving emergency preparedness. When I say the word we, that responsibility will go to the new Director of Safety and Security, who his name is Fitzpatrick, or Patrick Fitzpatrick, I'm sorry. His nickname is Fitz, he goes by Fitz. And I'll be sending out an announcement later on today. He'll be starting April 29th. So just want you to know that. The other big thing you may or may not know about is this little picture is affordable housing, because we are working with Bellwether and Chief Seattle Club on bringing affordable housing to the campus. This would be the location. It would be the south west corner of the pecampus. Note that the pea patch is still there. The key thing about this, and this goes back to the land acknowledgement comment I made, is that Bellwether is a nonprofit affordable housing developer. Chief Seattle Club is their partner. And through Chief Seattle Club, it'll be a Native American focused affordable housing development. And part of that development will be a longhouse. It'll be which will provide a gathering place, not just for the Native American community, but for the North community as well, because we would share in the use of a longhouse. So it could look like this. This is the intellectual house at UW. Of course, we'd be appropriately socially distanced. This is 2 to 3 years away from being a reality, but we're well underway with the process. So I've taken up a good chunk of Pete's time, and I just want to say thank you, and say please fill out the feedback form when it's emailed out to you. It's helpful to us in our thinking. Appreciate it. Over to you, Pete.
Pete, you're up.
I know, I'm having trouble here.
Okay, that's okay. So I'll just remind people that all the wonderful comments that we have seen in the chat, we are collecting those as well as the form data and that form will come out later on this afternoon. Thank you so much, Terence, for the update. And Pete, are you ready?
I am. Are you seeing
Awesome.
the PowerPoint?
Yes, we are.
All right.
Is the interpreter visible on screen, please?
Yes, you are.
Just making sure.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So if I hide myself, can we highlight the interpreter? Okay. So teaching and learning moving forward, similar to Terence's presentation, this is going to be based a lot on feedback that we received from the instruction part 1 conversation. I wanted to highlight 2 things that came from that feedback. The first was that people felt like what was being presented was all were all ideas that were completed, and there was no room for feedback. I assure you that that probably had more to do with how I was presenting and less to do with the intent. And so I want to be clear that although I will be presenting some examples in this presentation and some ideas that will move forward, I'll also be presenting directions for instruction. And within those directions, we really are looking for your feedback. Are these directions that you all think would be fruitful, that they fit with North's culture, and that they're in line with our values and the instructional priorities that we have? And then the second feedback that I got was specific, or a little bit more feedback that I got was specific to the wording of the feedback forms. The term proposals on the feedback form were throwing people. And so I have tweaked that wording a little bit to hopefully be clearer about what we're hoping to get in terms of feedback from you all. For the presentation itself, I'm going to talk a little bit about context and some recent changes in instruction. And then I'm going to focus on where we go from here. Specifically, some major directions: sharpening our focus, transitioning our students, innovating the curriculum and the pedagogy, and supporting instruction. And again, all of this looking for your thoughts and feedback. A couple community reminders. These are consistent across all the presentations. Again, this presentation is to solicit feedback and collect ideas. and a link to the feedback form will be provided. As Terence mentioned in his presentation and Tony in hers previously, information that we're presenting to you is what we know today. As circumstances change, things may change from the presentation, but what you are looking at now is based on what we know at this point with a lot of uncertainty, and I'll address that here in a little bit as well. And of course, prior to any changes becoming effective, appropriate unions would be involved and processes would be followed. So just as a reminder, and Terence touched on this as well, the environment that we're operating in, I probably don't need to remind folks of these things, unfortunately. But with the uncertainty of budgets, the uncertainty of COVID, the uncertainty of CTC Link, and the impacts of that conversion to CTC Link, we still have a lot of unknowns. And so we continue to learn, actively learn about these three environmental pressures along with others, and we continue to adapt. But as many have expressed, as I know, we need goals and we need a path forward. And I've heard from folks relative to other areas that they're feeling like this uncertainty is allowing and obviously contributing to preventing us from looking too far into the future. We're in a reaction mode. We're in a in the moment mode. But we really do need to shift the focus and envision where we are going to be long term and how we're going to get there. And so some of the directions and ideas that you're going to see today are in that vein. They're in the line of helping us envision what a long-term future for North Seattle can be. Before I get into some of those directions and ideas, I do want to share some recent changes in instruction since January, since the last presentation that I gave in January. The schedule of classes has been modified to reflect reduced budgets from as far back as the summer, and also student demand. We have seen, whether it's COVID fatigue or issues with CTC Link or people not liking the remote learning, that there has been reduced student demand, which is atypical of this type of budgetary environment. Usually when we have finances and an unemployment environment that we're living in right now, we see an increased demand. But across the state, very few colleges, two-year colleges, are reporting an increased student demand. So we have obviously adjusted the schedule in concert with the student demand. The medical assisting program closure recommendation that was made in the winter has been approved, and we are working on the teach out of those students. An integration of e-learning district-wide has begun, and you've seen messages about this integration. We're also working with this integration to make sure that we create systems and processes to allow for continual feedback for not only the beginning stages of the integration process, but also for the later and long-term e-learning services that we're getting. The goal, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, the goal is to maintain the same, if not better, service to the colleges in a more efficient manner. And then lastly, and I've touched on this, the implementation of CTC Link has really hit instruction hard. And I applaud and give great kudos to the staff and to the faculty and leadership, instructional leadership, for working within the CTC Link environment and adapting to it. In particular, senior support staff, thank you for all of the work that you're doing, putting the schedule in place, working on things like faculty workload. I know that work has been extremely difficult and one of the most challenging parts of CTC Link change for instruction. The criteria that we're using in decision-making for instruction was initially set forth in the summer and has continued as we move through not only the year, but also as we think long-term. So we are refocusing on our core instructional mission, which is getting students to and through degree certificate programs, helping students attain sustainable employment, and helping students successfully transfer. Using an equity mindset and reinforcing our attention to underserved students, we'll see an increased focus on transitions in the directions that I present later. We will work to maintain a fiscally sustainable division. As I mentioned previously, reducing and/or eliminating duplicative programs in workforce across the district. The part of the motivation, part of the decision, better word, around medical assisting was due to the fact that Central is primarily the medical focused college of the three. And you'll see that we have focuses at North that are going to mean more students from the district to us. A review of overall instructional organization, and we talked a little bit more about that in the last presentation than I will in this one. And then using data in our decision-making processes. And you'll see this as a theme throughout the presentation, but I do want to touch here on some of the good things that are coming and are promised out of CTC Link. Better access to better data, more reliable, more comfort with the data that we're seeing, and also better ways to incorporate data into the decision-making processes. And in particular, in the spring quarter, you're going to see some opportunities to learn more about ways that we're going to be able to get data into the hands of faculty and staff so that you can better assess the classes that you're teaching and the processes that we go through. So these are the criteria that we use and will continue to use in our decision-making processes. And now I want to get into the actual adaptations to the new environment that we're doing and also proposing. The first three are kind of overarching directions. And then the last two that you can see here are throughout those directions, throughout the presentation. So the three major directions are rescaling our current programming, building more intentional transitions, and pursuing innovative curriculum and pedagogy. And throughout those directions, you're going to see the influence of guided pathways and the influence of data in our decision making. In terms of rescaling, I want to, again, provide you with an overarching vision, but then also give you some examples. So in workforce instruction and professional technical, we're really using those long pathways from pre-college through the VPAS degrees as a way to frame our workforce instruction and prof tech. But this does not mean that we are going to stop offering all of the unique programs that North has to offer when compared to South and Central. And then in academic transfer, we continue to build solid pathways towards the associate degrees, Associate of Art, Associate of Science, which are leading transfer students to bachelor's degrees and beyond. And in both of those, I should also mention the Associate of Business. Now, I don't want to list all of the programs and pathways here because A, it could take too long, and B, it's possible that someone's not going to see themselves in there, and that would be incorrect information. So please know that the VPAS degree pathways in workforce instruction are some of our best examples right now of programs meeting student demand. And then also know that within academic transfer, we continue to pay attention to what the students are interested in and to create curriculum and pathways that matches those. In terms of building more intentional transitions, this is also work that we can be extremely proud of. North is taking the lead in the state in proactively building more on-ramps and transitions into our guided pathways programs. And I want to share one of those pathways here. Hold on one second. Oh, I'm lost. Okay. Give me 1 second, please. Okay, there. Okay, are you seeing the a pathway to basic and transitional studies on-ramp? Could I get a thumbs up from Terence?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this is one of the guided pathways program maps. This specifically is the basic and transitional studies on-ramp to STEM. And as you can see, both on the curricular side and on the to-do side, we have built in the basic transitional studies classes that can get the student from where they are to, onto, and through the STEM pathway. And then additionally on the right here are the reminders to attend orientations, to pick up planners, to transition from BTS to college level courses. We have made, North has made presentations at regional and state and national conferences showing this off. And again, being recognized as a leader for intentionally building pathways that meet basic and transitional students where they are and bring them all the way through to their 2 and potentially 4-year degrees. Are you seeing a slide that says adapting to our new environment?
No.
Okay.
No.
Hold on.
Yes.
Okay, so is it a slide that says building more intentional transitions?
Yes.
Okay, so we are also expanding iBest on-ramps into more workforce programs, and I will awkwardly do another stop share. I have several examples that I could share here, but in the interest of time, I'll share 2. The first is in IT. You can see a pathway here that again starts in adult basic ed, English as a second language, and developmental education, and gets the students all the way through 2-year and potentially again 4-year degrees with careers in mind at the end of those pathways. So again, being very transparent with the students about what their path can look like from basic transitional studies through our multiple certificates and degrees, and then again to the VAS degrees. And another one that I wanted to share is in accounting, where we have more explicitly shown, bear with me for a second, what that pathway can look like from excuse me, hold on 1 second. So you can see what that pathway looks like again from from adult basic ed through specific iBest courses into certificate programs, additional iBest courses, into 1 and 2 year certificates, 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees, and then again, ultimately careers. So here we are laying out pathways for students that take them all the way through 4-year degrees onto the careers of their choice. Now, before I move into the next direction, I do want to pause and say that we are we do recognize that many of our students are many of our students are or do come to North not for a degree necessarily, but for a few classes in order to get them ready for a nursing program or ready for a specific program at the University of Washington. We are not forgetting those students. It is just that we are going to service those students within the existing pathways that we've created. So if I'm a student that's only looking to take biology and anatomy and physiology and chemistry in order to get to nursing school, there will be a place for me at North still within those guided pathways frameworks that we've created. Are you seeing a screen that says pursuing innovative curriculum and pedagogy?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, the first bullet point is.
Oh, okay. So under one of the other bits of feedback that I got from the last presentation was that people felt like we weren't creating opportunities or honoring opportunities to pursue innovative curriculum and pedagogy. That could not be further from the truth. Again, apologies in how it was presented last presentation, but we are always looking to pursue innovation, curriculum, pedagogy, and in supports. Where we see in-demand programs or curriculum that fit our criteria and fit our core areas, we're going to pursue those. Where we see new adaptations for the new normal for teaching and learning, we're going to pursue. We're going to find new ways to work with other areas of the college. Student services made some great presentations and some great strides in the concept of one-stop shop. How instruction works with student services is going to change. How instruction is going to work with facilities, work with security is going to change. And so we will look to adapt to their changes as well. And then, as I mentioned previously, finding new ways to get critical data into the hands of faculty and staff to make the decisions, to assess and to make the decisions that they need to make relative to existing and potentially new and innovative programs. Examples of some recent innovations, we've touched on these broadly in previous presentations, but I want to dig a little deeper here. Under the direction of social justice and intersectionality and that focus and that mindset, we've made strides since January in working with Native American, American Indian, and Indigenous Studies curriculum and student supports. We've been to a couple webinars and we've had some really intensive and good conversations with groups who are eager and excited for us to become a part of the curriculum and pedagogy that's being offered to students around these subjects. Climate justice curriculum is being infused across instruction. Thank you to the first cohort of faculty who have learned under Heather Price and others and are beginning to infuse that curriculum. We're developing an ECE pathway for ESL student cohorts where the content of the courses would be taught in their primary language. And that's not just ECE courses, but also the support courses that go with it. And then additionally, working collaboratively with grant programs. We've got some great news from DeAndre this morning and executive team about the hard work that TRIO and LSAMP are doing in recruiting and bringing in students to those support programs to further their own education. In instructional support areas or supporting students from instruction, the Library, Teaching Learning Center, and Student Media Center are adapting to the environment. Not only this, I'll call it temporary environment of COVID, but also thinking about what it will look like beyond COVID as we start to return on campus. Similarly with the Student Learning Center, incredible adaptations to online tutoring, and now beginning to think, what's it going to look like as we move into a more hybrid model? So in all of those areas, Library Teaching Learning Center, Student Media Center, and Student Learning Center, the challenge and the focus now becomes, how do we adapt to a more hybrid model? And in e-learning, more specifically, I mentioned that integration earlier. So integration is a part of the adaptation, but then also that return to a hybrid mode of work and how e-learning can best support faculty as they shift back to a hybrid mode. I want to end by thanking you. Continued thanks for all of your hard and adaptive work, and to blend two metaphors together. We're not out of the woods yet, but we can see a light at the end of the tunnel. Please provide your feedback. These are ideas, or these are the two types of questions that you're going to see on the feedback form. And I hope the wording of these questions helps you think about how to give feedback for this presentation. Thank you.
Pete and Terence, thank you so much for providing us with that update. I'm sure you all agree there's just a ton of new information out there. I'll reiterate that the feedback forms have been revamped so that you can better dive into your thoughts about what has been presented today. Those will be sent out via email. So please watch for those. And to be respectful of your time, we are right at noon. We thank you all so much for joining us in this presentation. The chat comments are being saved. So have a wonderful day and a wonderful quarter.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.